Today, my guest is Todd Nelsoney. Todd is the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership for the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. He has also served as an award-winning principal of a pre-K through 5th grade campus of over 775 students in a rural town in Texas. He's been recognized by the White House, John Maxwell, the Center for Digital Education, and much, much more. Todd has written 6 books, including the runaway smash, Kids Deserve It, and his newest book, Building Authenticity, a blueprint for the leader inside you. He's passionate about doing whatever it takes for our students and teachers and helping others tell their story. So Todd, with that, that's a perfect segue into our first question. Tell us your story.
Well, hey, Brandy, first of all, thank you so much for having me on here. I'm super excited to be able to chat with you today. Well, a little bit about me. I started as an instructional aide, who then became a teacher, who then became a principal, and now I get to work as the Director of Culture and Strategic Leadership. I also have written a bunch of books, like you said. I get to travel and do consulting and speaking. I work with schools, districts, and businesses across the world in helping them grow their culture, improve literacy, have student leadership, grow their own leadership within them, difficult conversations, like all these kind of things. But I've got to do all those kind of things. And it's so interesting anytime somebody asks about your story or your path, because I'm like, do you have all day? Like, because there's so many little rabbit trails I could go off of to talk about things. But I've been very blessed in the places I've been placed in and the people I've been placed in front of, just to kind of get to grow alongside of and be challenged by. And I think all of that has really just grown me into who I am. And so there's so many parts of my story, but I knew pouring into others was always going to be a part of what I did, no matter where I choose to follow my passion next.
Oh, Todd, I love that. I absolutely love that. And pouring into others. You know, John Maxwell talks about adding value, kind of the same language, just different semantics. And I think that that is such a powerful mission that you have. And I've heard you speak both in person and virtually, and you are truly a dynamo. You have the energy and the passion to do this work. And I'm so fortunate here today to be able to talk to you more about it. But my work kind of has taken me into a journey of exploration into the science of hope. Are you familiar with the science of hope?
Very minimally.
Okay. So the science of hope, it talks about how in order for us to improve ourselves on that personal growth journey, we have to establish goals. We have to have what Rick Schneider talks about is willpower and way power. So it's agency and the motivation. And then the way power is the mental roots or the pathways. And so when you think about educators, because education is probably more difficult now than it has ever been. And when you think about educators, how can you equip them with the agency and the pathways in order to accomplish their goals?
You know, I think what I've learned in my path through education and seeing it from so many different viewpoints into the process is that I feel like there's a lot of deprogramming that has to happen in our field. When I look at where things were, where I started, the kind of beliefs I had about education or what a teacher should look like or how a teacher should behave, I think my position on that has shifted very much over the years, not only as I have become more educated into the human condition, but also what our job truly should entail. I think, you know, when I talk to educators a lot, I talk a lot about how one of the things we've been conditioned into is that if you are not giving all of yourself to your students, you are not a good teacher. If you take days off, you are not a good teacher. So if you don't get that perfect attendance award your school may offer at the end of the year, you haven't been as good as the one who did. If you aren't buying your own school supplies, you don't love your students as much as those who do. And I think there's all these false ideals of what it takes to be a great teacher that has just been inadvertently drilled in our head, and it's not real and it's not true. And I've found that as I have I guess the word would be deprogrammed myself of those beliefs, I've become a better educator. I've become a better colleague. And in addition to that, and me understanding boundaries and how to take care of myself, but also take care of those around me, I've become a better friend and a better family member and spouse and father. And so I see all of them working together when for so long I was always told they can't. There's no way for them all to align and for it to work. This is the job you chose. Get ready to give your whole life to it. So,
yeah. And we don't have to be martyrs, do we? We can set those boundaries. And, I think our values have to drive us. We're people first. We're moms and dads and husbands and wives and whatever. In my opinion, the family has to come first. I've always said that. And I believe it to my core. But it is so hard as educators for us to give ourselves the permission to set boundaries to protect that family time.
Well, because the work we do is heart work. And because of that, I think the really, really good educators are the ones who are in this field because it's what they've dreamed of. They love pouring into others, whether that's their students and their families, their colleagues. Like there's so many ways that can look in education. I think we also need to get out of the mindset that if you're not a classroom teacher, you're not a good teacher anymore, because all the roles in education serve something. If I'm a great cafeteria worker, I'm serving a very important role in education. My job matters just as much. If I'm a great instructional aide, if I'm a great assistant principal, if I'm a great HR director, like all of those things matter. And when we try to prioritize that, well, but the most important is this. Okay, well, we can say the most important is the classroom teacher. But when that custodian doesn't show up anymore, do you do your job as well? No, they all play together in making sure that every single piece matters in this whole idea. But one of the things that was very difficult for me to comprehend was that no matter how long I dreamed of being an educator, the word educator is and always will be a job title. It is not a defining characteristic of who I am at my core. And that has been so hard for me to come to the realization for, because my whole identity was wrapped up in being a teacher. Like I worked the long hours. I gave so much of my check to reinvest into my classroom. And I loved it. I still love being a teacher. I love getting back in the classroom and getting to do those things. Like that's part of where my joy comes from. But what I'm saying here is that for me to understand that it's not who I am at my core. And who I am when I leave that building, who I am when I'm out with my friends or my family or any of those, that's who I am. And one of the big pivotal moments when that really became visible to me and understandable to me was when I was working under an assistant superintendent that I really admired. And I was working long hours. I was trying to constantly get that to-do list done that we never will, but we always convince ourselves we can. If we just work long enough and hard enough, we can get it done. And so I was staying late. I was getting there early. I was there on the weekends. And she came up and she said, I want to give you just a little piece of advice. Take it for what you want. And I said, okay, yeah, I'm always ready. Like I admire you. I really want to listen. And she goes, I just want to tell you. She said, I've seen you here a lot. She said, and keep this in mind. If you leave tomorrow and decide to quit and go do something else, work another school, whatever you want to do, she said, in 20 years, there will probably not be anybody here who remembers that you work here. She said, but if you don't go home and start spending that time with your friends or your family, she said, in 20 years, they will still remember that you didn't show up for them, that you weren't present for them. And she said, and who are you putting more value in? The people who won't remember you or the people who will? And that was so eye-opening for me. I don't know why, but it was that moment that I went, oh my God, you're right. I can still love my job and invest in my kids and my people and my colleagues. I could still do that, but it doesn't have to be all of who I am, my entire identity. I don't have to give up time with friends on the weekend. I don't have to get home late and miss time with family. I don't have to miss certain events because I need to get this to-do list done. I've got to be at this extra program. I've got to do this. There's a line that I can make it where I can be a good teacher and still know that that's a job and that I can still go home and be an even better family and friend. And then now with my own children, my wife and I have twin 3-year-olds, and raising them has really changed my mindset again with this whole idea of education, because I was talking to one of my good friends, and he's got like teenagers now. And he said, I love that advice that your assistant superintendent gave you. He said, I heard something similar, and it was after I had kids, and it's really stuck with me. And I said, what is that? And he said, well, I never, ever, ever want my kids to look at me and say, Dad, why do the kids at school get the best sides of you? Like, why do they get the fun dad? Why do they get the full of energy dad? Why did they get the dad who goes on their field trips because he's their teacher, he's their principal? And then we just get the dad that comes home tired, or the dad that can't come home because he's got another meeting or another thing. And he said, when they asked me that, he said, I realized, oh my gosh, like my children should be getting the best version of me. I can still give a really great version to the kids at school, but I don't want my kids to go, why do they get the best sides and we just get the scraps? And that was just another reminder to me that though for some that idea may be controversial, because they may say, well, I can straddle the two. No, you can't. Research proves you can't. Research proves that you can't do everything amazing all the time. And also at the same time, it's no matter how much you love this job, and I love this job a lot, it is a job. It always will be a job. And so though it's hard work and hard work, but it is a job. And that can be controversial, like I said, to some, but it's the reality. And we have to stop romanticizing what this work is, because what that does is that creates a stream of educators burning out left and right, because they can't keep the candle burning at both ends. They can't carry all that water in their boat and still keep it afloat. And then they don't feel like they were good enough because they didn't do it like this person on social media or this person who wrote a book, because they only saw the bright sides of things. And it's work and it's hard. And when you love it, it's still hard. And so I think that's just really important to remember.
Yeah, no, that is incredibly important to remember. And, from my vantage point, my kids are raised and now they have their own family, and I have grandsons. I have 2 grandsons that are right around the age of 2. And so I'm enjoying them. And my mindset has changed a lot over the years, because we don't get a badge of honor whenever we work so many hours, over 40. And we can love the work and not completely dedicate ourselves to it and spend so much time that we're taking away from our family. And what I have seen in my life is I probably did spend too much time at school or at the office. Well, I know I did. Yeah, I probably did. I know I did. But you know what I see now? My daughter, whom I love dearly, she's not in education, but she is working. And what does she do? She's the hardest worker ever. And she puts so much time in. And I consistently tell her, Morgan, put it away.
Yeah.
Set some boundaries, put it away. He's only going to be 2 for a time. Yep. Enjoy every moment. And it's easier said than done. But I think it's true for educators. I think it's true for a lot of people in our world, especially those that work remote. It's harder to separate from it. But, in our schools, culture, I believe, begins with the adults in our building. And so in order for us to build healthy cultures, I think one pathway to that is to lead with hope. And the Lead with Hope framework is a system of self-efficacy that I have developed. And H stands for habits, O for optimistic outlook, P for passion, purpose, and perseverance, and E stands for excellence. So Todd, I'm curious, which one of those letters resonate most with you and why?
I was reflecting on this as I thought through when you shared this with me, and I think the one that just continues to resonate with me is the P, the passion, perseverance, those things, because I think that when I think about my own career, I feel like that has been a defining characteristic of my own career and the path that I've taken, even in my personal life. And so I don't know. I love the word perseverance, number one. And then I love getting to help people see the true definition of passion, because that's also been something that's important to me, because I feel like I was raised in an environment that once you find your passion, that's your passion for life. And so you got to stick with that forever. And I realized early on that my passion can change, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And when passions change, it doesn't necessarily mean I love something less. For example, when I became a principal, the number one question I got was, aren't you going to miss the classroom? Because people knew I loved being a teacher. And I said, yes, I'm going to miss the classroom. Teaching is still my passion. But I've begun to shift into saying, but I'm also discovering a new passion in leading in this way, that I want to pursue that. It doesn't mean I love teaching less. It means this kind of cropped up. Let me go. I want to seek that out, see what that's like, what it feels like when I'm in it. The same with writing a book. It was never a passion of mine to write a book until it became one. And then I was like, ooh, let me see if I can actually do this. And then let me step and go do some consulting and speaking. And my passions have shifted throughout. But like I said, I don't love being a principal any less because I'm not a principal anymore. I don't love I could go and do those jobs again and absolutely love them.
Yeah.
But I love what I'm pursuing right now a little bit more because it's my current passion. And that's why I'm going after that right now.
Well, and the cool thing is, and you said this earlier, no matter what your role is in the school, you're an educator. And in everything that you just mentioned, teacher, principal, coach, consultant, all of those roles, you get to share that love of teaching. You get to be a teacher. You get to be a coach. I mean, it's not one or the other necessarily. You're kind of blending it and having the best of both worlds.
Well, and I love that you said it like that, because what I've seen in the last 4 or 5 years is just this hitting against each other in education. There's, social media is wonderful, and it has really been instrumental in my career path. But it does have a dark side as well, and it does create a very easy to fall into void of negativity and complaining and being able to say whatever you want to say, because you can create a fake account and put whatever you want to put out. But I've seen a lot of educators putting themselves against other educators. And I hate that. Like, there's already so many enough idiots out there that are coming against education and saying the stupidest things about us and what we do or don't do. Right. But when we go against each other too, like, you don't understand me if you haven't taught in this state. You will never be like that because you left 5 years ago, or you haven't been in the classroom but a week. Like, oh my God, like, we're all impacting lives.
Right.
And I give the benefit of the doubt that we're doing the best we can in the moment. So though it may not be as what you're doing, it doesn't mean that I don't have an impact. And so I think when you come at somebody, I just think of all those roles, like we talked about, have just been so minimized in the past, and how instrumental they are, but how, as I've spent so much time investing and connecting with those typically invisible roles, I've continually seen so many powerful stories that nobody gets to hear because they don't value them the way that they value other positions. And everyone is instrumental in the success of a campus. And there is no one job that is better than another. Just because you have a college degree doesn't make you any smarter than somebody who doesn't have a college degree. Because I've met a lot of people with a college degree who are the dumbest people I've ever met in my life. So that does not mean anything.
Absolutely.
But I think you really miss out on one of the best parts of life, which is connecting with people on such a personal level by hearing their stories, when you choose not to connect with them because their role seems inferior to yours or not as important.
You talk about that, and where my mind goes is, as an individual, as a human being, our biggest obstacle is frequently ourselves. So even though people talk about other roles as being inferior or what have you, what's the motivation behind that? Because I know that whenever I became a principal, I had a bad case of imposter syndrome. I had a bad case of it. And We have to be able to lead ourselves well before we can lead others. But I think by being vulnerable and authentic, sharing our stories, and then just being in the moment to truly share and receive somebody's story, you have to be in the moment.
Mhm.
And that provides the connection and the belonging that I think that we are all missing in education right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could do an entire episode or a
Mhm.
series over the imposter syndrome because
Oh,
that is legit. Like, I still, to this day, struggle with that. But for me, I have really made it a point to surround myself with people who will pour into me with love and empathy and kindness, but also hold my feet to the fire
yeah,
and keep me accountable and tell me when I've been inappropriate or need to apologize or acting like an idiot, because I think that if you're truly going to have a really good circle, you've got to have all those kinds of people that I can receive that criticism because I know it comes from somebody who truly loves and values me.
yeah,
And so I think you're exactly right. Like, that's what's really helped me keep my level headedness is when I begin to spiral, when I begin to feel like a fake or a fraud, or I'm not doing it well enough, or somebody's so much better than me, or less than me, or whatever the emotion is that's coming through. That's when I can very quickly know I need to go to my circle and I
right,
need to get them to ground me in what is reality, because I think that we need that humble spirit. We need that vulnerability. We need that. That's just part of the human condition. What all of us crave at the core
right.
is just to be seen, valued, and heard. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's been a mission of mine that I always hope that when I'm working with other people, I'm meeting one of those needs. I'm helping them feel seen in some way. I'm
Right.
helping them feel heard, or I'm helping them feel loved, like seen, valued, and valued. So I want to make sure that those are the things that, am I doing that? Because if I'm not, I feel like I'm not meeting the moment.
Right, right. And in education, it's all about growing people. And sometimes it takes us a long time to be able to reflect on our stories, to reflect on our adversity or our trauma or whatever the baggage is that we're carrying around, and be able to see clearly who we are and what we want out of this life. So that leads me to my next question, Todd. In terms of adversity, you know, people look at you and I'm sure they think, oh, wow, his life's perfect. He doesn't have any problems. But I believe we all have our backpack, our invisible backpack that we are carrying around. And some of our backpacks are heavier than others. So, in terms of your adversity, are you willing to share any adversity that has led you to the place you're at today?
Do you have enough time? I think that what I'm constantly reminded is the version of people that we see is not even a 1% of their real story.
Mhm.
Even your best friends, your closest loved ones, you don't even know their whole story. But I think for me, when I look at the path, I was raised in a very volatile home until I was in seventh grade, and my mother left my father and took my brother and I with her. And then we're being raised by a single mother who was working multiple jobs. Who then, while I was in college, she also was graduating college to go be her job of a teacher. And then just the things along the way in the matter of 7 years, losing six family members, including three grandparents, an uncle, and then unexpectedly losing my mother, is still one of the most traumatic moments. Just having somebody you're so close to and experiencing loss in some element during your life, but never, that was my first taste of loss by someone that was your rock. And so having to go through that, and then my wife and I's journey with infertility and trying to be able to have children and walking that path completely alone at the time, because we assumed nobody else had been through stuff like that. Like, it wasn't the norm. And wow, have we been wrong now? I mean, now I see everybody is dealing with some version of that, it feels like. And so just those little things that at the time people had no idea, except for the loss of my mother. That was very public. But the other things, it's like, as my wife and I went through those, I mean, we spent over 8.5 years trying to get pregnant. And that, I think, is still one of the most difficult journeys I've been on as well, just because of the normalness, I would say, shouldn't be normal, but normalness of people saying, "Oh, when are y'all having kids?" And God, every freaking time someone would say that, and I just wanted to be like, none of your business. Like, you're trying, it's not happening. And so now getting to share that piece of our journey has been really liberating, and also allowed me to walk along others' paths as well to help them feel less alone. But I think that when we talk about things we've been through and things that we're going through, I think it's important to talk about that period. I think because when you share pieces of your life, what happens is you allow others to feel seen in their own journey. Though their journey may not look the same, though it may not have the same ending point that that piece of your journey had, it doesn't mean I can't feel less alone knowing that I'm not the only one going through that. And so I think that that has been just my constant reminder, and the reason why vulnerability has always been important to me. It's why when I decided that I wanted to start doing speaking and consulting and all that as a professional path as well, I made sure that even when I got on social media, like the person that I put online, I want it, and the person that you see present, I want it to match the person that you could meet in real life. I've been very cognizant of, I don't ever want to create a false facade of what success or life or any of that looks like, because when I have met people with the shiny exterior who have had great success or done wonderful things, and then I get to meet them in person and I'm like, whoa, I don't like you in real life. Like, it's clear that you're what I fell in love with was a crafted version of you. Then that just makes me not trust even more people. So with my own professional journey, it's been very important for me to be as realistic as possible. To share my struggles with those through my blogs, my podcasts, what I share on social media, whatever it is, even in my books, to include me and not just the professional version of me, to hopefully inspire others to share their stories too.
Yeah. And it is so powerful that you share a piece of yourself, because that's what we want. We want to connect with people. We want to see ourselves maybe in the story a little bit. I think that helps each other along the healing path, if you will. Because I do think that we are more alike than we are different. You know, you and I have both lost a mother. As soon as you started talking about the infertility, a friend of mine who is a teacher still at Ramsey Grade School, Mrs. Moreland, shout out to Mrs. Moreland, amazing third grade teacher. I was fortunate enough to get to know her during my time as principal at Ramsey Grade School, and she shared a little bit of her story with me. And she also shared a little bit of it that will be part of my book when Lead with Hope comes out as a book. But that's a gift. It's a gift that we give to one another in sharing our stories and being vulnerable and authentic. And it's truly powerful. And I do think that it helps us heal, and it also helps the other person heal as we're pouring into them.
You know, and I think that I have such a vivid memory of when this really solidified in my own mind. Is the second book that I wrote was called Stories from Web. And after the success of Kids Deserve It, I was like, I want something that's unique. It's different. Like, I don't want what everybody else is creating. Like, I want to be able to stand on my own creativity and ideas. And so I thought, well, I love my school that I'm working at. There's so many brilliant people who don't have social media, who aren't sharing what they're doing. I'm like, but they should. And so I was like, well, I'm going to use my advice that Jimmy Casas, my mentor, gave me. And he said, make sure that you're always amplifying the voices of others louder than you're amplifying your own. And I thought, well, I've got this platform. I've got this book thing. Let me write a book with my staff. And so that's why it's called Stories from Web, because we were Web Elementary. But when the staff was submitting stories and we were putting it together and and I was writing all the other pieces, they didn't know what each other was submitting. So when they got the book, they got to read a little piece of each other's.
Yeah.
And one of the staff members shared, there was a chapter about loss and how do you still continue with your job when you're experiencing this immense pain and this loss, and how do you carry on? And one of the staff members wrote about suffering a miscarriage and losing her child and having that experience and still being there teaching through that. And I will never forget, she came to me after the book came out and she goes, one of the weirdest things and coolest things just happened. And I said, what is that? And she goes, well, I shared this really personal story that I haven't really talked about with other staff here. Close friends and family knew. She goes, but once that book came out, she goes, one of the other staff members here on campus, she said, just came to my room, knocked on my door and just gave me a big hug. She said, and all she said was, I'm so glad to hear that my story is not the only one that's like this.
Oh.
Like, this is the first time I felt like my pain wasn't only being felt by me. And she said, as soon as that person said that, she goes, I just knew that. She said, first I thought, God, what have I been doing not sharing this? She said, but at the same time, it's like, it was that reminder I needed, she said, to see that even though her story was different than mine, being able to see that somebody she loves and somebody she works with and respects has a story like hers, it allowed her to carry her pain a little bit lighter, and to walk. And knowing that I could come and reach out to you and talk to you about it when I'm feeling certain things. And that story was another one to me that I was just like, okay, yeah, another reminder. Thanks for that God wink of another thing where it's like, this is why this is so important for us to be doing as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of times we do walk around with masks on for whatever reason, and sometimes it's just as simple as we've been hurt in the past and we don't want to be hurt again. But as I said before, we are more alike than we are different. And I think that there's strength and there's power in sharing our stories, and it helps us heal one another.
100%.
Yeah. So now, as we segue into one of the last questions, Todd, I'm curious, what are you up to these days? What's your passion project right now?
I can't tell you how much I get that question. What are you doing next? And I'm like, I am very much a live in the moment kind of guy. I've never had a 5-year plan. Bravo to those who can do that. Yeah. For me, I'm like, let me look at my life path and tell you how much I didn't see any one of these things coming. Yeah. So it's kind of like, what's even the point? And so for me, it's always like, do I love what I'm doing now? And is it challenging me? Because if it's not challenging me or I don't absolutely love it, now I need to really put a lot of effort into then what do I need to change? What do I need to do different? Yeah. And right now, I really, really love my day job working for the Texas Elementary Principals and Supervisors Association. I love, I'm born and raised Texan, so I love getting to pour into those Texas leaders. But I also love this speaking and consulting and things that I get to do because it is such a vulnerable and personal experience for me, and everything that I present on is stuff I've actually done. It's fulfilling for me to get to connect with people on that personal level. But now that's also begun to shift into speaking to more businesses or companies, and it's a whole new world of people who don't come from that education mindset that I'm getting to be challenged with how to connect with them in similar but different ways. But getting to pour into them is just, it's a new excitement for me. I'm working on some online stuff I'm creating that will hopefully be out in January. But no, I am not writing a new book or anything like that. Like, people always ask, what's the next book? And I'm like, every book was just something that one day I was like, I love this. I want to write about that. And right now, I'm not feeling anything that I'm like, I have to write a book over it. Right. I'm just really loving spending time with my family, loving my job at TEPSA and getting to do that. But then also loving to do the speaking. And right now, that's enough for me on my plate. Oh yeah, that's a full docket. But I love your attitude. I'm a very type A person, so I'm the 5-year planner. I will admit it. I own it. Sometimes I say I'm a recovering self control freak.
So I'm working on those things, but I would love to be an in the moment kind of person. So that's my goal. My goal is to be more in the moment and less planned in my life. But I love, love, love what you're doing in this space. You were recently on a virtual summit with Charlie Peck and Joshua Stamper. I had a small role in that as well. And it was great to hear you speak to the educators online, because I do truly believe that you are very authentic. You are who you present to be, and you have so much wisdom to share with us in order to create boundaries in our own life and to help give 110% in the classroom or in the school as well. But I love what you started with in terms of putting your family first. That is so, so true and so important, especially today as education is harder than it's ever been. But I will also mention that I am going to be in Texas. I'm flying out next Friday. So how far are you from San Antonio?
Well, I actually live between all the major metroplexes. So I'm 2.5 hours from San Antonio, 3 from Dallas, hour from Houston, hour and a half from Austin. I got the nice little sweet spot.
Yeah, I will be in San Antonio. Shout out to Steve Baller. He does Within Our Ranks. So I'm going to go out there and learn more about, basically what you're doing, Todd. So learning more about that side of the business. So
San Antonio is my favorite Texas city, by the way. That is where we go to vacation because I love San Antonio.
Okay, my husband's going to join me. So what's your go-to in San Antonio for us?
Oh, Lord. The Riverwalk is fun, but it's like a fun and done because it's usually very crowded. But there is a place at the end of the Riverwalk called the Pearl. And it's an old brewing factory that they redid into a gorgeous hotel. It is my wife and I's favorite hotel in the world. We've stayed all over the world, and it's still our favorite hotel we've ever stayed at. It ain't cheap, so we don't get to stay there a lot. But they also have redone that entire area where it's a shopping area. They do a farmer's market on Saturdays. They have a really, really cool little grocery store type thing they put in there, and 3 or 4 restaurants that are amazing. So anytime we go to San Antonio, we always go to the Pearl. But as far as restaurants, this might be controversial. Everybody's got their own favorite San Antonio restaurant. We never eat on the Riverwalk unless it's at the Pearl because it's all very commercialized and it's not legit Mexican food. But there is one that's not too far of a walk from the Riverwalk called Rosario's. And some people are like, really, Rosario's? And I'm like, yes, we love Rosario's. And it's also because my wife and I, since we were married, have been going to San Antonio at least 3 or 4 times a year to go just on getaways. And Rosario's is always our stop. No matter how long we're there, we always have at least one meal at Rosario's, just because A, of the memories, but B, it is fantastic food. Like we love it. It is not your traditional Tex-Mex. There's a little bit of a difference, not a lot, but it's so good. And there are so many good restaurants in San Antonio, which is why we love going there. Yeah. And it's going to be hard to believe, but this Illinois girl has never been to Texas. So this will be my first trip to Texas, and I appreciate the advice, and we will check out the Pearl and Rosario's, and I'm so looking forward to it. You're going to love it. Thank you. So as we conclude this episode of the Lead with Hope podcast, if people want to connect with you and bring you to their school or connect with you about coaching or consulting or the other services that you provide, how would they reach out to you? Yeah, so the easiest way is my website, which is just toddnesloney.com. If you don't know how to spell it, that's okay. You can just Google how you think Nesloney spelled, and it'll come up. I'm also super active on social media under the moniker Tech Ninja Todd, TODD. But yeah, my website has videos, blogs, all my resources. It's got all my social media. It has a contact me form. Some of the variety of topics I speak on, like it's got everything you need there. And I tried to create that one-stop shop to have that there. So you can check that out. All right. Well, thank you for coming on today and sharing a little bit of yourself with us. And I look forward to staying connected with you and watching all of the great things that you're doing out in the ed space. Thanks, Brandy.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at teachbetter.com/podcasts, and we'll see you at the next episode.